Hi everyone, this is going to be a really random video. This is going to be quite a quick one, and this is just basically asking for a little bit of help. I obviously buy a lot of books, I read a lot of books, I love books, but there are some certain genres, some certain niches that I'm unable to find anywhere, and like I say, they are quite specific. There are certain books that I want to read that I can't find anywhere, and so I'm wondering if any of you can recommend me some. If you can help me with some recommendations, I would be really happy. As I say, there are a few different sort of niches here. There's some horror, there's some sci-fi, there are some romance, there's some historical fiction. There are things that I would like to find. So let's just crack on. Now, the first type of book I'm looking for is a UFO horror. So I'm not talking about humans going into space. I'm not talking about like alien romance or anything like that. I don't want any romance involved. I want a horror. And I want it to be about aliens. Now, as I said, these are very niche, but I would like something along the lines of the film Signs. If you've seen the film Signs with Mel Gibson, basically everything's fine, they live a normal life, and all of a sudden people start noticing alien signs in the air, lights and crop circles, all that sort of thing, and it gets more and more and more intense as the aliens actually start to invade the planet. That's the sort of thing I want. Do you know any books like that? Because everything that I find alien related tends to be people have gone off into space and they're living a whole space life alongside aliens, and I'm just not down for that. But I really want something like a UFO horror. Do you know any books like that? Number 2, something pandemic-y. Now, I know it's a little bit controversial because we're in a pandemic, but something pandemically or end of world, sort of an apocalyptic horror. Something like the Fallout game that you could play on Xbox or PlayStation, where there might have been a nuclear fallout and now we're all living in the aftermath of it, or there might be some sort of pandemic such as the one that we're going through at the moment. That sort of thing. Do you know any books like that that are genuinely quite creepy and will sort of frighten me a little bit? Number 3, Victorian era horror. Now, I'm not talking about books that were written in the Victorian times. I'm not on about classic gothic horror or anything like that. What I'm after is something set in Victorian era, sort of around 100 plus years ago, where creepy things are going down, whether it be a Jack the Ripper situation, whether it be a ghost situation, a murder, some sort of Victorian horror. I'm after the sort of the Victorian setting, but something to scare me. Similarly, on the same lines of Victorian, I would like a Victorian romance. Do you know any really good Victorian romance? Not really sloppy ones, but something a little bit pushing it, a little bit risque. I remember I read one, and by risque I'm not meaning that I'm asking for some sort of, you know, that sort of book. I mean something where it's not, it really delves into the relationship, and maybe it's a bit taboo, maybe they're not supposed to be getting together, maybe they do. I'll stress, I'm not after a classic romance, I'm not after something like Emma or anything Jane Austen. I'm after something that has been written sort of more in modern times, but about the Victorian era, that sort of thing. Again, with romance, I really like wartime romance. Are there any wartime romances that you can recommend to me? I like that sort of era, you know, the soldiers, the romance, all that sort of thing. Do you have any that you could recommend to me? Haunted house horror. Anything about a haunted house. As you can probably tell, I enjoy reading about haunted houses, considering my house is a bit weird. So I do like reading about haunted houses. So if there's anything you can recommend to me in that category, I'd be very happy to receive it. And the final one is extremely niche, but I've never seen anything of this subject, but plague time books, whether it be fiction or non-fiction. Not after heavy study-based situations, but something maybe telling you the true story of the plague, what happened, how it affected people. I'm talking about sort of the plague in the 1600s, the bubonic plague that came, or anything sort of fictional that has an element of truth in it to what life might have been like in that sort of time. Plague books. I've not read anything about the plague, but it's something that interests me. And yeah, so those are my niche books that I can never find anything about. If you've read any of them and you can recommend some, don't recommend me one that you read and you thought was terrible, but you think it fits into one of these categories, so you recommend it anyway. If you read one that was good, let me know, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.